Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast, episode 64 with Charlie and Justin. And we are both recording from our respective vehicles. Justin, you want to fill us in on why we're not together?
Yes, sir. I sure do. I got the call yesterday about noon, 11 o'clock. I was running the big truck out. Interstate 77 in Ohio, and my wife says, "Hey, hon, it's time. I'm going to labor delivery." So I got a hold of my dispatch and told everybody what was going on, and we worked it out. And I put that truck in the wind, so to speak. So I've been at the hospital since 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I lied. 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and it's slow rolling. So the baby's actually coming 3 weeks early, and the doctors were just concerned with Shay's, my wife's, blood pressure and her blood sugars levels and stuff. So they said, there's no magic number. That week 39 doesn't really change a whole lot. So it's better to get her out now than to wait for an issue to happen at home. So we're here. It's a slow process trying to induce labor, for a first time, I guess is what they're telling us. It's a slow process to try to induce labor for your first baby 3 weeks early. Your body's just not ready to do it. So I tell you, she's a trooper, though. She's really hanging in there. She's got good spirits. I think I almost think it's harder on me than it is her. I don't mean that if she's listening. I'm sorry, but it's an emotional roller coaster because there's nothing I can do but hold her hand and tell her how great she's doing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I feel helpless, and if anybody that knows me, I'm a control freak. I try to control all the aspects of every day that I'm in. So it's tough.
And speaking of controlling, we tried to control the podcast as much as we could, and we bounced around some potential ideas because yesterday we spoke when this all hit, and we said, okay, well, this is obviously going to throw a little bit of wrench in the plans for the podcast. But as we mentioned on several episodes, we kind of made a promise that come hell or high water, we're going to make sure that we record every Saturday, or at least post every Saturday. Sometimes we record prior and post it every Saturday for people. So we tossed around some ideas about what we could do to make sure we got an episode out. Like one of the things we talked about was maybe having someone be a guest co-host, or we talked about maybe just me doing it solo with myself, because originally you weren't going to be able to leave the hospital. I mean, technically you still can't leave the hospital, but we didn't even think that you would be allowed to exit the building.
Right. Yeah. So earlier today, I asked the nurse, I said, "Hey, is there any way I can run out to my truck and get my hoodie? Because, man, is it cold in there?" And she says, "Yeah, absolutely. No problem." But last night, the lady told us that I can come and I'm the only visitor it's allowed. And if I leave, I can't come back until the following day. So, and there's just no way that I'm going to potentially miss the birth of my child. It's just not going to happen. So I just as soon figured I wasn't allowed to leave. So this evening, whenever we were texting, and I said, "Hey man, maybe I could sneak in the bathroom and sneak in a 15-minute Zoom call, and then you could just take over from there." I wanted to give you guys, the podcast itself an update, you know what I mean? Because these guys are all family. And I feel like the obligation to update my family to what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
And I came out of the bathroom and was talking to my wife, and she's like, "Honey, I got time. Go outside and record." And I said, "Well, I don't think they'll let me back in." And the nurse was in the room, and she's like, "I'll push the button. Go. It's fine." So, that's where we're at.
And you caught me right at the right time, because I was probably about 15 minutes out from starting to record, and
right.
you messaged me and said, "Hey, maybe we might be able to work this out." Like you said, the original plan was to do it solo, and then we talked about you hit me up and said, "Hey, maybe I could sneak into the bathroom," and then lo and behold, we eventually got out to your car, and here we are. So part of the reason that
Yep.
we wanted to do all this today was to talk about reliability. And that was something that you and I spoke about before we started, about how in order to be successful, we always talk about how it requires like a strong support group. Like it requires like, people that are your family members. It doesn't have to be like direct family. It could be people that you hold near and dear to your heart as close as family, but it takes a lot of people to be able to make someone successful. And I think that one of the key components of being a successful family member, because you brought up that term, is being reliable and being accountable to other people. So for us, it's, we made a promise that we're going to post every Saturday. So we're going to post every Saturday.
Absolutely.
Your child is literally going to be born today, most likely, or tonight, rather.
We're looking at probably sometime early tomorrow morning, but yes.
Okay. Gotcha. But regardless, we're still here recording, so wanted to have that same reliability that we preached.
Absolutely. I feel like until the people say they don't want to hear me talk on their phone anymore or on their computer anymore, I'm going to do this until I'm on my deathbed.
There you go.
It's a promise that we've made, and I stand firm on, I hold my promises. I don't break promises, and that's just where it is. So yeah, I'm excited. And I think this is definitely a step that I was nervous about, this whole time. I had a feeling that the baby was going to come on a Saturday and we were going to have to jump over these hurdles. But I knew without a shadow of a doubt that we would figure it out. I didn't know if we would both be recording for sure or how it would work. But I knew that the Chasing Dreams podcast, this show is too important for somebody, and it has to go on.
Yep.
And I think that's to me, that's a big light to shine on reliability. We talk about leadership and being dedicated to our craft, you with bodybuilding, me with weight loss, and just being a good friend or good father now. But we can't be the best at what we do unless we're reliable to not only ourselves, but everybody that we tell we are going to do something. We have to do it.
It's almost like, for me, at that point, not only do you want to be reliable because you don't want to let other people down, but then it becomes a pride thing within myself where I become, overly stubborn. If I say I'm going to do something a certain way, that I have to be able to get it done, even if it's something that doesn't affect other people. Like if I tell someone that I'm going to do something that has no direct effect on them, just the fact that I know that they can come back to me and say, hey, you said you were going to do this. That's more than enough incentive for me to make sure that I do whatever it is, just because it's like almost like a self-pride thing at that juncture.
Yeah, that's actually ironic you brought that up, because about 6 weeks ago, somebody did that to me, and they said, and we haven't talked about it on air since early on, but a new listener started binge listening, which is really cool to me, by the way. Side topic. I've had numerous people say that they binge listened all the way to current.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and to those guys and girls that are out there that actually take the time to just listen to you and I talk and our guests talk over and over and over again throughout their day for a week straight, or however long it takes them to binge listen to our podcast. Thank you. Because, that's dedication to us as much as it is for us to them.
Yep.
But anyways, he says, hey man, did you really do an Ironman? And I said, ouch. No, I didn't. I trained for 3 months to do my first sprint distance triathlon last winter. And I did suffer a couple, I wouldn't say severe injuries, but pretty major setbacks to my cardio training. I wasn't able to run for, as we all know, like almost 4 months. So we changed gears and started working a lot on strength building, because I couldn't do a whole lot of cardio, and I gained some weight. And I explained all this to him, and I said, but you mark my words, dude, this is going to happen. The time frame that I set has come and gone, but in the lifespan of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we will do a whole series on Ironman, because I am going to do an Ironman. I said it. I told you guys I was going to do an Ironman, and by God, I'm going to do one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just something that when you said that, it reminded me, like, I need to address that, because I know there's other people out there that are thinking, man, he never even talked about it. Like, it was scheduled. He said, like, come on, man. And that's one thing. Like, I guess time frames sometimes might have to change, right? Deadlines sometimes get pushed, but the overall goal has to remain the same.
I think that
for me personally, like you,
yeah. And I think that it circles back around to the one day where you and I talked about doing the right things when no one's looking. And that's where
right,
there's a certain sense of like personal accountability and then interpersonal accountability where it turns into reliability. So like if I have a client that I don't have much interaction with aside from everything virtual or digital, because a lot of my clients aren't in person and it's over an internet, over email. It's like a virtual client and coach relationship. We talk on the phone as well, but I don't physically see them all the time. So what happens in that instance is there needs to be a lot of trust. Like, I trust that you're going to do what I'm telling you to do if we're going to get the results that we expect to see from what it is that we're doing. And I was talking to one of my clients today who I've been working with a relatively short period of time, just 2 months or a month or so. And he said something about how he hasn't broken the diet once, aside from we gave him a cheat meal where it was, a more of a social thing, and he's not, in prep or competing anytime soon or anything. But regardless, he said that he hasn't, wavered from the diet at all. And he said at this point, it's just like a pride thing for him, because he doesn't have to have, obviously he has to have accountability for following it to a degree. But if he were to have, a couple snacks on the side or a couple cheat meals, in the grand scheme of things, that's not going to be a big discernible difference as far as his progress goes. So I'm not going to be able to see that. So really you're relying a lot on that phrase or that term reliability when you have that type of relationship with someone where you're not, babysitting them all the time, which when I have clients, obviously I don't want to be an over glorified babysitter. And I've said before that when I give updates and when we make nutritional changes, it's all predicated on the fact that the assumption is full adherence. When I make changes to a diet plan, I'm going to assume that you're following it 100%. So I think that
right,
it goes full circle to, like, if you really want to be the best at something, people need to be able to rely on you that you're doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it.
absolutely. And that's pivotal, and in every aspect. It's not just like, this is one of those topics where it's not even about fitness and not about bodybuilding. This is about honor in our word. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
and I really like that, because I don't think that we are completely solely focused on fitness. That is our strongest undertone, because it's how we met, it's how we bonded and grown our relationship and become so close. But we both have the same mindset of holding ourselves to a different level of accountability and honor. So that's something that stands out to me. When somebody tells you that, and somebody goes out of their way to make sure that, hey man, I'm not cheating, I'm not wavering from the plan. And like when I'm at work, I have guys that I know that I work with, they don't cut corners. They do their job when nobody's there. Because what I do out in the oil field, there's nobody around. People get away with cutting corners all the time. But that's the same thing where you have people that just refuse to have a lack of honor, basically. You know what I mean? They know the rules and they want to play by them. And I think that's
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I heard a quote here, and it fits perfectly kind of to what you're saying about people not cutting corners, and other people do cut corners and get away with it, from time to time. And you could make that fitness specific, like something that obviously I have a lot of experience with would be bodybuilding. And there's some people that can get away with cheating on their diet occasionally. Some people are a lot more genetically gifted than I am. I'm one of those people, unfortunately, that I can't get away with a whole lot of wavering for my nutrition because I'm not going to get as good of results as someone who may be able to cheat a little bit and have a little bit of flexibility. Regardless, though, I heard a quote, and I hope I didn't say it on the podcast in a previous episode because it's been a couple of weeks since I've heard it. I may have talked to you on the side. I mean, I have a lot of conversations pretty regularly about the stuff we talk about on the podcast. I kind of talk about this in day-to-day life too. So I'm sure there's some overlap, but I heard a quote the other day and it was talking about wrestling. And given that I'm coaching wrestling and you've been a wrestler during, your high school days and before that, it kind of stuck with me as something that you could kind of parallel to multiple different avenues. It's not just wrestling specific. But the quote said that the great thing about wrestling, or what makes wrestling a great sport, is even if you give 99%, at some point in time, the 1% is going to eventually be exposed. So I like to think about that as kind of a life analogy. And, you can be reliable, or I guess it's kind of a misnomer. You're not actually being reliable if you're only doing what people are watching, but doing the right thing when people are watching, you can get away with that for a while. But eventually, even if you cut the corner a little bit, that's eventually going to be exposed. If it's in weight loss or in competition or in your job, sometime down the road, you're eventually going to have to pay the piper for doing that sort of thing, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like you've talked about it before. The bodybuilder that comes into the gym eating out of Tupperware and drinking out of a gallon of water and then leaves and goes to McDonald's drive-through because nobody's watching. So he's only doing it when people are around. That's the guy that's not ever going to step on stage. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, you've talked about that inadvertently in a different light before because and that's the cool thing about, I think, really about all the stuff we talk about is we're not just researching a topic to talk about here. Like, these are just things that literally come up in our day-to-day life. And it's like, man, we should probably talk about that because it's reoccurring, just like the time management thing. We always talk about time management and how important it is to your day-to-day life. And without having time management, we would never have gotten to the point where we are with the podcast. Just like without accountability or reliability, we wouldn't have gotten to the point where we are in the podcast.
Yeah, we would have probably quit months and months and months ago. Or maybe if we would have still continued, I'm sure we wouldn't be recording episode 64. We'd probably be recording episode 34 because there were so many episodes where you and I
they were tough
to shoot a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, tough. Like, when COVID first happened and we had to learn how to Zoom in the morning so we could record at afternoon. Come on. Like,
I think we've recorded every time from like 3 a.m. to probably 9 or 10 at night just to squeeze it in before the day was over.
Absolutely. And that's a show of, and not to pat either one of ourselves on the back, but that's a show of dedication to the craft, right? I mean, you're taking time, unoptimal time. So you're taking time from sleep, recovery, making time in your time management program to get something accomplished that normally wouldn't happen because we normally set our time pretty regular for the most part. Like, everybody knows not to bother me till 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday because I'm going to run, I'm going to record, and I'm going to train, or I'm going to train, record, and then run. Like, it's just the plan. That is the plan. So.
Yeah, man. And the plan gets stuck to. I mean, once it's like for both of us, like we talked about, once we have a goal in mind or something specific that we want to accomplish, even if it's minor and seemingly trivial for other people, if it's spoken, it will be done. And that's just kind of how we've, at least, I want to speak for you, but I know you're the same way, but that's just something that I've always had a difficult time doing, is going back on my word with certain things.
I agree.
I struggle mentally with being able to cope if I don't, But hey, man, let's get into a commercial break. We wanted to keep today's episode kind of short. Obviously, you have very, very, very important things to attend to here shortly. So we want to make sure you get back in the hospital and get with your wife and make sure she's comfortable for the birth of your daughter coming up here shortly. So let's take a quick commercial break and we will chat it up for a little bit longer when we come back. As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well. And we are back from our commercial break. So Justin, before we went to a commercial break, we kind of delved into a lot about reliability and having other people be able to trust you and know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, and then how you're going to do it. One of the things that I kind of had a revelation of was regards to my training. I think I may have talked about this on a different episode. Again, a lot of overlapping conversations that you and I have, as well as the conversations we have with others from day to day. So I'm sure a lot of our discussions are kind of repetitive in nature, but I try not to discuss things too often unless it's really important. But I digress. I had a thought the other day, and I felt like this was a good time to bring it up because it kind of fits in line with people being able to rely on you. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is how thankful and how humbled I am with some of the stuff that I do in regards to the things that people trust me with. So the original thought came up with training, like my personal training, like specifically the athletes that I train. And I posted this on social media, and I don't know what made me think of this, but realistically, my kids that I train, all my athletes, you only have one shot at this. If it's a kid who starts with me as a middle schooler and they want to eventually get to the point where they're playing in college, you only have one chance at this. Time is very precious. It's an invaluable commodity that you can never get back. You can make up for everything else. If you gain weight, you can always lose it again. Or if you lose muscle, you can always gain it back. Time is the one thing that you really can never gain back or get more of it. I mean, once it's gone, it's gone. So these kids really only have one shot at their athletic careers. And there are people that pay me money to completely dictate the outcome of that one chance. And I thought that was pretty profound, right? Because I thought it was cool that I could do what I love and make good money for it. But then it was even more humbling for me when I thought about how there's only one shot at this and people are actively seeking me out, and then they're trusting me with that future. Because I know from firsthand experience what parents do in regards to dedicating their time, their money, their mentality, their emotions, and essentially their child's entire youth is dedicated to sports in a lot of instances. And so I know what goes into that. And when I see that, and I understand how passionate parents can be about their kids' athletic futures, for them to trust me, there's a huge amount of responsibility that I have to shoulder there, because I have to hold myself accountable in order to be deemed reliable in their eyes. They need to be able to rely on me and know that I'm doing everything humanly possible in my power to make sure that their athlete is better. And that's something that kind of transposed into other areas too, like my coaching. People trust me to make the right diet changes to get them where they want to go with their physique, because again, they're paying me a lot of money to be able to make sure that they have a good outcome with that. And that's a lot of pressure sometimes. And I never really thought of it as pressure, but now that I've sat back for a while, because I've been kind of ruminating on this for a couple weeks now, and I sit back and I almost enjoy the pressure, because right. I look at it as a compliment. Like if you have a lot of pressure on you, that's probably a compliment. Like, to make a sports analogy here, something that I do so often is, if someone's asking you and to take the last shot of a basketball game, and you're the guy with the ball in your hands as the clock's ticking down, that's a compliment because people are relying on you. So compliments sometimes are coupled with pressure. So I see it goes both ways. So I don't want to look at it as pressure and have anxiety about my performance and my ability to get people to perform well, because I have confidence in myself and I trust that I know what I'm doing. But I do look at it as a compliment, and I'm very thankful that people do that. It's kind of like the one thing that I can kind of shift the conversation over to you would be like the firefighter thing.
I like
you want to be the person that you would like coming into your house if your house was on fire.
absolutely. And that was something that I was actually going to say, you know, that's like the whole theme of my firefighting career now, and not just firefighting career, but life in general. I want to be the guy that I want to rely on for my family, not just because I'm a firefighter, because that's a big part of it. Like, I've been thinking a lot about when I get off of that truck, it's game time. This is not fun. It is fun. So that's a contrast, right? Have so much fun and I enjoy learning about the fire service and I enjoy the tones going off at 3 o'clock in the morning while I'm sleeping, because I know that somebody needs help and I have the ability to help them, right? But when I get off of that truck, there's no laughs, there's no smiles. It's all business, because I want to be the guy that I would rely on to come to my house. And it was, you know, it's kind of I don't know the word. It's a sobering feeling, maybe, when you realize that, when you make the realization that the people that call that 911 dispatcher and say that they have this emergency, and that emergency dictates the fire department coming, that's the worst day of their life.
Yeah.
So you need to be at the very absolute best you could possibly be at the drop of a hat, no matter what. So, and that's kind of the way I'm approaching life from now on, is I'm going to do every single thing in my power to be the best dad, husband, friend, training partner, firefighter that I can possibly be, because I want to be the guy that I would want doing it with me. Does that make sense? So like,
No,
whenever I have,
does.
like when I'm at the gym, I'm training with Matt, the guy that I train with on a daily basis. I try to stay off of my phone now, because I found myself playing on my phone a little bit in between sets if it wasn't his heavy set and, you know, he didn't need a spotter. But now I try to leave that thing down, and unless I'm changing a song or whatever real quick, or taking a video for him so he can see how his form is, I am standing behind the bench he's on or next to him, and I'm hooting him on, because that's what I want. That's what I expect. You know,
I think you show it a lot with like your passion in training, because I think that I've always tried to do that. Well, I shouldn't say always, but as of late, I've tried to do that with everything too. Like when you say you want to be the best dad, you want to be the best firefighter, the best friend, the best training partner, you know, likewise, I want to be the best at everything that I do too. And the one commonality that I can find with people who are the best at what they do is they have passion for it, and they have so much passion that you can tell. Like I don't know any great athletes that aren't passionate to the point where it just radiates off of them. So when I'm training with someone, and I mean training in the sense of me being in charge of their training, not like a training partner, but when I'm training a client or an athlete, I want to make sure that I am fully invested in them. I want them to feel like they're the only client that I have. And so I need to make sure that I'm passionate while I'm training them. I want to be enthusiastic. I want to be boastful. You know, I want to be energetic, because sometimes they're going to rely on me for that, to pick them up when energy's low. And there's that term reliability again. So I think that if you want to be good at all those things, you just have to try to have passion for them. because you're not going to be good at something if you don't have passion for it. And I feel like you and I are blessed enough right now in our lives that almost everything we do, we have passion for. So like you and I have gotten to the point in our adult lives where we're not going to waste time doing things that we don't want to do or aren't passionate about.
Yeah. Dude, you literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to interrupt you and say the same thing. I don't have time for things that I'm not passionate for.
Yeah. Because all
Period.
that's going to do, that's just going to detract from the time that you're trying to allocate to things you are passionate about.
Exactly. And I'm not just, everything that I do from a day to day, every aspect of my life is needed and necessary. So if I talk to you on the phone, if I have a text conversation with you, if I go to the gym with you, if I help you at work, if I train with you at the fire station, it's because you are a necessary aspect of my life. Or that thing is a necessary aspect of my life. Because I don't have time. Like there's not enough time in a day to do frivolous stuff.
Yep.
When you're focused on a goal.
I just had this conversation with a client, and I said when we were talking, I try to get a hold of my clients pretty much every day, or at least every other day, just reach out to them and communicate some things. And I was talking to a client, one of my online clients, and I said to him, I said that, you know, how's your day going, or something of that sort, wanting to check in and just get an overall sense of how he was doing. And he said, I'm doing well, thanks. How are you? And I said, well, I said, doesn't matter how I'm doing. I said, you're the person paying for services. We need to focus on how you're doing. Like, how are your meals going? You know, kind of half serious, but half in jest too. And he told me, he said, I thought you were just checking in to have a conversation. And I laughed at him and I said, no, I said, I have too much purpose for that. Like, not that I don't care about how my client's doing. And if you ever want to reach out and just talk to me because you need someone to talk to, I full-heartedly believe that all of my clients would feel comfortable doing that. However, I'm not texting you to communicate just for the sake of saying that I communicated with you. It's kind of like how you and I have talked about before when people in passing say, hey, how are you doing? A lot of times they don't actually want to know how you're doing. They're just saying that kind of as a cliche, as a passerby, like, hey, how's it going? And then they go on their merry way without you even answering how you were doing. And I kind of like when I text my clients, even if it's something as simple as how are you doing, I'm calling because I want to know how you're doing and I want to know relevant information. I'm not just communicating for the sake of communicating. Likewise, I had another client who I hadn't talked to for about 2 days, which is rare because he and I speak every day because he's nearing the intense stages of prep. We had a show lined up, but the venue's kind of in the air, so the show may get pushed back. So we looked at another show about a month after that. So we're kind of in limbo as far as an exact date, but regardless, he's to the point where we want to get him kind of within striking distance pretty soon. So he and I are talking regularly, and we didn't talk for a few days. And he told me, he said, hey, sorry about the lack of communication the past 2 days. And I said, that's okay. I know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So you and I don't need to communicate every day just for the sake of saying we communicated every day. Like, it needs to be purposeful. It needs to be genuine. And it kind of goes back to an earlier discussion that we've had on another episode where we talked about, at least for me, I've noticed in my life that time doesn't always equal value. And that was something that Dr. Ryan, one of our previous guests, helped me kind of figure out, because I always thought in my life and the things that I do, that the more time I spend, that would be more valuable. So if I train someone for 2 hours instead of 1 hour, that's a lot more valuable to them. Or if I email my clients, 3 times a week instead of once a week, they would get more value from that. And then what happened is I started kind of spreading myself thin, because you can't invest 100% of your communication in one person or 2 people or 3 people or 4 people or 5 people. So I needed to find better ways to add value, to make, the conversations that I do have with people more substantial. There needs to be a lot more substance there. I need to make sure that I'm not just communicating for the sake of communicating and saying, hey, I talked to him every day this week, so I was a good coach. Maybe I only talked to him once this week, but I gave him valuable information and some nutritional changes that he needed to make that resulted in positive effects. And the analogy that I would use with you, that I'm sure you and a lot of our listeners could relate to, is it's kind of like working out. You can come to the gym and be effective and have a really darn good workout in 45 minutes, or you could be there for 2 hours. Just because you're lifting for 2 hours doesn't mean that it was valuable time spent, because you could just be going through the motions with low intensity and not really accomplishing a whole lot, you know?
Absolutely. And that's a training update in itself for next week that I have planned. I wanted to talk about this week, but time constraints, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the relative intensity in training is so important, you know, making sure that you're deliberate in your actions. And I think that ties right into being reliable. Like, being deliberate in what you're doing shows how reliable you are.
I agree. And I feel like with the reliability thing, you know, that's the kind of the common theme of this episode that we wanted to talk about. And then we kind of branch off on these sub tangents, and it seems to continue to work its way back to the reliability topic.
Right.
Speaking of reliability, I think you need to be a reliable husband right now, probably, because we kind of set the time for about 9:10. We'd like to finish up because we wanted to keep it short, and right now it's about 9:12. So the both of us could probably ramble until your daughter's born, but I don't think that would make the wife too happy.
No, it would probably make Dad a little upset too. But
well, man, I wish you luck. I mean, I'm kind of going to say a goodbye to you first before we say goodbye to our listeners, because I kind of think that they should hear that the next time that we speak to you, and the next time that you kind of address the Chasing Dreams podcast world, you'll be a father, which is pretty surreal, I'm sure.
Oh man, it's an incredible feeling, and something I've waited for my entire life. And it's one of those goals and one of those things on the original list. When I first started putting Post-it notes on that mirror, it was one of the very first ones, and it was just said Dad, because it's something that I've always wanted, and I was not in a place like 2 years ago to that. I was not in a place 2 years ago that was ever going to become a reality.
Yeah.
And here in the next, boldly going to say in the next 24 hours, one of the biggest goals of my life has become an achievement. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, you really have to. I don't want to sound too cliche here, but you really have to live in the moment, because this is a time that you'll obviously never forget. And so, you know, my advice to you for the next couple hours, having never gone through it though, so take my advice for what it's worth, but I would definitely try to savor every second and soak it all in, enjoy what it was like. And then, because you'll kind of revert back to these memories for the rest of your life now.
Absolutely. That's the plan, sir. That is the plan.
I'm excited for you, dude. And I'm sure our listeners are too. And I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up. So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode 64. We appreciate you guys tuning in and recognizing that we're always going to make an effort, no matter where we're at or what's going on in our lives, to make time for you and be reliable for you. So with that, we will see you guys next week.
Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge and take it all. I'm born to be untamable, go right to the edge and